Hello, everyone, and welcome to this interview where we'll be talking about story listening. We often hear about storytelling and its benefits to foster literacy, but sometimes, although the stories are age appropriate, they are a little too complex, and because there are too many words that our children or students don't understand, it can be more difficult and doesn't have the impact we want. And to discuss what we can do to have our children enjoy the stories more and learn more from these stories, I'm very honored to welcome Dr. Beniko Mason. So Dr. Mason is a Professor Emerita at Tennoji University Junior College. She teaches English as a foreign language and has dedicated her career to explore the input-based teaching method. And she's specifically uses story listening and guided self-selected reading to teach her students. So we'll come back on these terms during the interview. So her research aims to verify the input theory to reduce the cognitive load on students and develop more efficient strategies to help EFL, so English as a foreign language students, become independent language acquirers in English. And Dr. Mason uses her teaching method with students, but I have the impression that it's something we can use very easily or that can be transferred to the home environment. So good evening, Dr. Mason, and thank you very much for accepting my invitation.
Hi, yes, of course. Thank you for inviting me.
And so I would like to start by maybe clarifying, so what's the difference between storytelling and story listening?
Okay. Okay, since we only have an hour, I have prepared answers to your questions in advance.
That's fine.
So
Yeah.
let me read them, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So the fundamental difference between storytelling and story listening is rooted in their underlying philosophies. Storytelling integrates stories into existing educational frameworks, viewing them as supportive tools for conscious learning. Traditionally, this approach to foreign language learning focuses on understanding language rules through repetitive practice, correcting errors, and sharpening skills with positive and negative reinforcement, essentially a behaviorist perspective. In contrast, story listening takes a different path. It aligns with Stephen Krashen's input theory of second language acquisition, emphasizing that language development arises primarily from exposure to comprehensible input. While story listening does not deny the potential benefits of conscious learning, because knowing the language rules can sometimes aid comprehension. But story listening questions why we should spend so much time on something that isn't the central cause of language acquisition. The input hypothesis posits that subconscious acquisition is crucial to language mastery. Simply listening to stories that students comprehend and enjoy stimulates language acquisition. It contrasts reinforcing learning through memorization and repetition drills, even in a playful manner, is considered impoverished input rather than enriching input.
Okay.
This distinction highlights the different educational philosophies that underlie each approach. In today's discourse, input is often taken for granted, yet many remain committed in their belief in conscious learning methods. Language acquisition becomes a natural outcome when students encounter optimal input in a supportive environment, free from the stress of receiving low grades.
Yeah.
However, more is needed while comprehensible input is crucial, because not all comprehensible input is of equal value. What we genuinely need is optimal input. That's precisely how story listening was developed to provide. This is where the difference lies between storytelling and story listening.
Okay. Thank you very
Okay?
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and when we're talking before, you said it's also to go so traditionally, like you said, it's a lot of we give things to repeat, etc., to students. Even if it's in a fun manner, it doesn't necessarily harm them. So can you detail a bit more about what are the limits you see in more traditional ways of teaching?
Oh, sure. Okay, what are the limits of more widespread teaching methods?
Yeah, yeah.
There are lots of reasons. There are lots of limits. The first limitation is that it fails to offer optimal input, while the second is that it involves numerous activities that obstruct acquisition and consume valuable class time, preventing students from accessing optimal input. Traditional teaching methods, such as storytelling, within existing educational frameworks, often have significant limitations. These methods can create a learning environment prioritizing performance over genuine language acquisition. It is forced output. Everybody wants somebody to start talking, okay? So they prioritize performance over genuine language acquisition. Number two, many traditional approaches focus on superficial understanding and memorization, hindering deeper comprehension. So they ask memorization and drilling. And number three, moreover, widespread methods typically follow standardized curricula that fail to accommodate students' diverse needs and learning styles. This one-size-fits-all, the textbooks, this approach often leaves many learners behind and disengaged from the learning process. So this is a grammar-based textbooks is a hindrance. Number four, another primary concern is the emphasis on error correction and constant assessment. This creates a high-pressure environment that can hinder the natural language acquisition process. This takes away the freedom and the autonomy of learners. John Truscott has already warned about the possible harm grammar error correction can have on language learning. 10 years earlier, one paper argued that any error correction was ineffective in improving English composition skills for EFL students. Students will consciously make more effort not to make any errors and pay more attention not to receive negative feedback rather than freely explore language acquisition. Okay, the number five, this is the last one, is many traditional methods prioritize immediate outcomes, such as speaking, writing, and passing tests. However, these methods have been unsuccessful in developing both speaking and writing skills, and most learners do not score well in exams either. True language acquisition thrives on exposure to meaningful and interesting content, something that these traditional approaches frequently fail to deliver. Ultimately, by adapting an approach that prioritizes optimal input and latent acquisition, we can effectively overcome the limitations of conventional teaching methods. So how's that?
Thank you. So I can see it's all the stress that the traditional teaching method have that you see as negatively. And so that's why you have developed the story listening method. So we're going to come back on that. But one thing I wanted to clarify is you talked about optimal input. What does it mean, optimal input?
Oh, good question. Um, you know, it has been said, a lot of people have been saying comprehensible input is the causal language acquisition. And it is the comprehensible input that is important, the key, but
Yeah.
comprehensible input alone is not enough.
Okay.
Stephen Krashen already said that in 1982 in his book, Chapter 3. So I would like you to go to that book, which is given to you for free on his webpage. And so just go to the just go to Chapter 3, and he
Yeah.
talks about comprehensible input is not enough. And then we talked about this, and we came up with this, he has already used this word optimal input. The optimal input means comprehensible input is one of the optimal inputs characteristics. The second one is he calls it compelling input, but you can say interesting input or
Yeah.
relevant input, yeah.
Yeah.
And number three, the third characteristic is the rich input. Rich input means diverse language, diverse topics, things like that. The diverse topics will bring lots of different types of words. And then abundant input means you have to give it abundantly. Okay, so that's the optimal input characteristics. But optimal input alone is not enough, because optimal input has to have this environment, the condition, which is the condition where the people do not have high affective filter, which means
Yeah.
the students don't feel anxious, or they shouldn't feel threatened. They should feel very comfortable about learning the language, acquiring the language, without being judged all the time.
Yeah.
And so those are the reasons why I have said in my YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, there is a video called The Seven Deadly Sins in the Traditional Approach. Yeah. But anyway, have I answered the question?
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's very clear. And so I would like to then come on to your method. So how is it organized? So yeah, by the way, I would like to remind everyone that you're giving away a free story listening kit. So if you go on her website, I showed it this morning in my video, but if you go on her website, you can download a kit. So you have different kits you can choose from. You can download the kit by using the promo code library for you. So four in numbers, library for you. So you can see a bit more in detail what we're going to talk about. But
Yeah.
so, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I
That's
was
true.
going,
Yeah,
I
that's
was
that's
going
a
to,
that I'd like to give to the viewers. Yes.
Thank you very much. And I was going to ask, so what does it look like in class, story listening? What do you do? How is it organized? Can you
Yeah.
explain a bit?
Sure, of course. See, I do not talk to just one child, My
Yeah,
students have been always adults,
yeah,
uh, college students. And these days I tell stories to senior citizens, older people. And what I do is I choose a story, for
okay,
the group of students that I think they will like,
yeah,
And so I choose a story. And then what I do is I read several times to understand the content of the story, message of the story.
yeah,
And then I go through the text to pick up the words that I need to know to be able to tell the story correctly. Okay, not just words that I want to teach, the words that I need to use to tell the story.
yeah,
Okay, and then if I need to, if I want to talk about where the story came from, such as like if the story came from Ukraine, or those are place where the Central Asia is, then I have to show the map of the place, sort of, where
yeah,
Central Asia is. And then I have to go look for the map on the Google to find out how I can plainly, briefly show where it is on the blackboard to the students. And then when I start reading the story, then I see the words that I know that students will not know. And then
yeah,
I have to go through because I'm not a native speaker of English, I use dictionaries all the time.
yeah,
I first use a dictionary to find out whether what it means, and then in Japanese, and then I also look it up in the dictionary how it means in English, how it is explained, and then I go to the thesaurus to find out what synonyms they have, to see whether any of the synonyms might be familiar to my students, and then I put it down on the sheet of paper, which I call a prompter, and things like that. And so I prepare a prompter for the story, and then I tell a story. I rehearse at home, and then see whether I really need those words. And then some of the words I don't really need because I can
Okay.
remember. So I delete
Yeah.
them, okay? And then I've got some of the words that go, sometimes it's only 20 words, sometimes it's 50 words. Like for the short story that I tell to senior citizens, I've got a prompter, a vocabulary, word list, which is like 100, 150 words, because the story is long and complicated. And then when the story is complicated, I sometimes forget the flow of the story. I have to remember what happened, in one scene to go to the next scene. What triggers one person to say this and that. And so it takes a long time for me to internalize the story. So I rehearse, and then I delete the words. And then I rehearse maybe twice or three times. And while I'm doing this, I make the final prompter. Okay. And then I go to the classroom and I tell the
Yeah.
story.
Okay.
But, one of the questions I think you had was that, people think that story listening is to teach language. It isn't. Story listening, they think that story listening is to teach these words, the first 2,000 high frequency words. Or
Yeah.
this week, we have to teach the names of fruits, or we have to teach the family relationship. And so are there any good stories to teach these family relationships in a story type of thing? That's not the way how we do it. Okay. I try to find a story that students become quite very, very engaged.
Yeah.
And so when I have the words on the list, or when I draw a picture on the blackboard, the picture has nothing to do with the words that I want to teach. I draw a picture so that the students will be drawn into the story.
Yeah.
And then students will be able to follow the message of the story. And therefore, the words or the pictures that I draw on the board are not the target words or target structure. First thing I draw is a man's face. And I say, there was a man. Everybody knows the word man. Okay.
Yeah.
But I just draw a man and say, there was a man. And I go, he was a old man. He was 95 years old. And then students start imagining, oh, a man, an old man, oh, 95. And I draw a picture, I add a beard, and I add wrinkles, and I say he was like 95 years old. And I draw a picture of a man, a stick figure, walking with a cane. And I say he was very, weak. And then if the text said something like ailing or frail, I might use those words. And then write down those words just to introduce them, not to teach them the words. Okay. And something like that. And so the drawing, everybody's so worried about drawing, and they say, do I have to draw? I'm not very good at drawing. It doesn't matter. You just, practice a little bit. Everybody can draw somebody's face with a big nose, a small nose, a pointed nose, a big eyes or small eyes, or things like that. You know what I mean? And so anybody can just practice. Teachers can practice those faces. And when you see my YouTube channel, every time a man the same face, a woman, there was a man. He had a wife and the same face, same hairstyle. It's always the same. And so it's not a big thing about drawing. But what I wanted to say, I guess, to answer your question was that, you know, uh, what I can't remember what you asked, but um, uh,
Okay.
um, What was that question you were
It
asking
was
me?
more about how you use it in class, or you're describing,
Right,
yeah,
right, right, right. And,
yeah.
yeah, right. And so I just go to the classroom. Do you want to know how I start the class? I went to the
Mhm.
classroom, and because I was in a Buddhist university, and
Okay,
I'm not know if you can do things like that in England but at home I think you can do that with your children,
yeah.
because most of the I don't know if most of the people, but um, English people pray to God, so
Yeah,
you can do something like a evening prayer, or a good night prayer or something, and you let your child calm down, and then that's what I did with my students at university, because
ah,
we were university students, and this was a Buddhist university, and all the teachers were required to have a meditation session for 3 to 5 minutes before the
okay,
class starts. Okay, and so that's what we did. I just said, everybody, sit up straight, fold your the hands in front of your body or on your lap, and close your eyes, start breathing quietly, and let's start meditation. And then everybody gets very, very quiet. And during that time, I go through my lesson. While they are being quiet, I have to say this, I have to say that, this story goes this, da, 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 da. And I go through my future already in 2 or 3 minutes in my meditation. And then when I'm calmed down, I'm sure that I can start. Then I say thank you to everybody, and everybody wakes up, opens their eyes. And I go, and I say, today I'm going to tell a story from Russia. Okay. It is a story about a spoiled but bad girl. Are you ready to listen? See, I kind of introduce a little bit about the story.
yeah.
It's a
Okay,
bad girl. Okay. And it is a story is from Russia. And that is really good, because then students are going to feel good about not being told, not being, the students feel relaxed about listening to something that happened long time ago in a faraway place. It's not somebody, I'm not going to talk about someone who is sitting next to one of the students. I'm not talking about some famous television star or politician or yesterday's current news, anything like that. I'm going to talk about something that happened 300 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago. Yeah. And so everybody's really relaxed because they're not threatened. I'm not going to talk
because
about,
there is a distance, it's detached.
yeah, I'm not going to talk about someone who's sitting in the classroom. Well, I saw you yesterday at the market, and I'm going to talk to you. I'll talk to everybody about you. No, that's not a good idea. So I'm going to talk about fairy tales and folk tales. And
Okay,
so once upon a time, a long time ago, and then I start this. But again, I don't just say, once upon a time, there was a man. I don't do that. I say, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, many, many years ago, 2,000 years ago. And I write down 2,000. And everybody goes, wow, 2,000 years ago, what's going to happen? Yeah. It was in Middle East. Yeah. It was in Israel or something. I don't know. I just made it up right now. But, when God still walked on our earth or something like that. But anyway, um, so you start telling a story, but before you do it, you have to make sure everybody's watching you. Yeah, I'm not going to have the students sit in the back of the room. I had this rule that students had to be very close to me. They could only sit first 3 rows. Okay, they
yeah,
can
okay,
because they had to watch the blackboard. So those are the things that I do in the classroom, and I tell a story. And first thing I do is I introduce the character, the most important character in the story. So I would say, there was a man, or there was a woman, or there was a girl. And then I draw a picture of the girl, and um, uh, I I introduce the smallest piece of information at a time. I don't say there was a old, I wouldn't say there was an old fisherman. No, I would say there was a man.
progressively.
Yes, there was a man. He was an old man. He was 75 years old. He was married to a woman. The woman was 65 years old. The man was very, very poor. He lived by the sea. He lived in a small, dirty house, small, dirty shack in the house, a shack near the sea. He went to the sea every day and he fished. He caught fish. He was a fisherman. Okay,
Ah, I
so
see. Yeah.
expand the first sentence. If the first sentence on the story was in the written text was, once upon a time there was a fisherman by the sea. You expand it so many different ways to express, describe this scene. Just
So
like when you
yeah,
go to a movie and the first thing you see on the movie screen, they show you the big scene of the big city like New York. And then soon, it goes to a road, street, and then there is a door to the apartment. And then
yeah,
it goes into the apartment, and then you see a woman type of thing. Just
yeah.
zoom into this thing and have the students start imagining things.
Okay,
And
so when you do this,
yeah,
because I understand, so if there is one sentence or a description of a person, the aim is to not just read what the text
no,
says, but to try to create the whole atmosphere around, give details. But you say short sentences, and every time it builds up on the previous one. Um, and but when you do this, do the students have the text in front of them?
no. Oh, no,
Okay,
no, no.
so they just
They don't,
listen.
I'm telling you, they don't have to bring any pencils, no textbooks, no papers. They don't have to do anything. All they have to do is to sit there and watch me and listen and enjoy.
And just like that, they start remembering words.
What?
Just like that, because you say it's language acquisition.
Yeah.
They okay,
Yeah, they listen to the story and they watch me and they understand the story, they enjoy it. And sometimes they see the words on the board, and then sometimes they don't understand what I'm saying, but then I see it in small increments, small sentences, short sentences with the meaning develops into a target word, if you want to use the word target. I don't like that word, but target word. Using the words I think they already know, but then
yeah,
I use it in different ways or in different words. Some of the words they catch it. Okay.
okay,
And then some of the words that I say they may not know. But still, when you have 30 students in a classroom, you don't know what they know. And
yeah,
so you start saying lots of different things. Like you say he was an old man, and I'm hoping that they will know the word old. But then they may not, if they don't know it, I say he was 105 years old. And I write down 105. He was
yeah.
an old
Then
man. And you say
yeah,
he was not young. So you'd use not only synonyms, but antonyms. Yeah. And then the picture, and then other information that might indicate this man was an old man. And then
okay,
when you draw pictures of wrinkles, you write down wrinkles, and they say wrinkles and beard, and you draw a beard. And then they may not know those words, but then they hear it. And when they hear it once, in the next story, the same thing's going to happen. There's going to be an old man with wrinkles and beard again.
okay,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
actually, the
Yeah,
natural
you
repetition is going to
recycle the
happen.
vocabulary
Yeah,
as well. You don't
yeah,
just use
natural repetition.
once. Yeah,
And so you don't have to have them study at home because you do it for them by telling different stories.
yeah,
Okay? This is
okay.
so much easier for the kids
Yeah, I can
because it's
see
so much,
why. Yeah.
yeah, so much easier. They don't mind coming to class and listen to you.
So
And
all
then,
your lessons,
yeah,
or
go ahead.
you tell a story each lesson, or do you also do other things? I'm just trying to
Oh,
think. So this
yeah,
time from a teacher's perspective,
yeah,
if I
okay.
want to include this in my lessons,
Mm-hmm.
would I just do this, or would I use this to then maybe go back on some grammar points, etc.? Or it's really just story listening for the students.
See, this is called a pure optimal unified input approach. Okay.
Okay.
Pure means we do not do any of those seven sins.
Which are okay, what are the seven sins?
There are seven activities. Number one is textbook teaching,
Yeah,
grammar grammar-based syllabus with vocabulary restricted textbooks. Okay, textbooks has, we teach first 600 words with this textbook. So they have these all 600 words in the textbook. Okay, and we want they want the students to learn these words, 600 words, and so they give the students, I want you to remember 5 words by tomorrow, or 20 words for this week, and they assign those words and have the students memorize them, and they give tests, things like that. So number one is grammar-based, structure, vocabulary restricted textbook. Number one.
okay,
That's why we only use stories, written stories, because when you use the written stories, you don't just use the present tense or past tense. We use all sorts of tenses.
yeah.
You know, all sorts of different
And
structures, even with the three little pigs.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so is it important for you as a teacher or for the parents who want to use that to use a written text so that they can say more or less the same things like each time? So if they say it, children, they like to hear the same story over and over.
No, no, no. Every time different story. Every time
Okay,
different story. That's why your job is to look for stories. Look for
yeah,
stories all the time.
okay.
Interesting stories to make your students happy,
Yeah.
so that you can enjoy with your kids. Or
And and
you
yeah, so you need to choose the text carefully. Can you explain
Mhm.
how you choose the texts? Because I
Oh,
guess some texts might be like you think they're going to like the topic, but it's a bit too difficult
yeah, yeah.
or too easy.
Okay.
How do you choose the
Okay.
texts?
Well, difficult. You mean difficult by the way
The
difficult
words
grammar is
used
used,
inside.
grammar is used, or difficult
Yeah,
words are used. Yeah, you can rewrite them. You can just tell them in a simple way.
yeah,
Even you can, even Shakespeare stories are written for children, and so you can rewrite it. As a teacher, you can rewrite it. And so, just it's just a theme or
yeah,
topic that
yeah.
if the students are interested in. If the students are mostly boys, they might like to listen to a story about wars, like the loyalty or deception, those topics.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting for the kids.
Okay.
Yeah, even the girls like those stories, deceptions and loyalty and true love and things like that.
Okay. So
Okay.
yeah. You choose the topic. For the vocabulary, it can be very broad, or do you still go step by step? No, because you're saying if it's written, there was an old fisherman living near the sea, like you need to cut it like step by step. So there was a man, he was old, he was 75 years old, etc. So can you take any text? You just need to adapt how you say it, or do you
Yeah,
choose
you
this?
you just say it in a natural way, just like you're talking to your native child. I
Okay.
say, once upon a time, long, long time ago, 300 years ago, there was this pig. There was this pig, and this pig had two brothers, and you draw pictures of three pigs and you say, these pigs, one pig had a red shirt, and second pig had a yellow shirt, and things like you just create, and so that you can just catch their attention. And you can also review the words that you used in the last story. If you use the colors in the last story, you start using the colors in the story. And it doesn't matter if you use like a imperative, like
Yeah.
open the door,
Yeah.
close the door. You can't come in. You can use, I cannot remember the grammatical terms in English, but assisting verb or something, can and may and must,
Ah, yeah. Okay.
things like that. You can, those things people, the children do not learn. Junior high school kids do not learn until like a second or third semesters, such a term in the first year or second year. I don't know. I don't remember. But you can just introduce them from the first day. When you tell a story like, so the three little pigs, you introduce like one, two, three, but then at the same time you introduce first and second and third. The first little pig, second little pig, and third little pig.
Uh,
Yeah, and then you introduce the house, the different kind of houses, straw house and brick house and wooden house, and you can introduce the parts of the house, door and window and the roof and the chimney and things like that. Oh, so many words that you can teach. And then while you're teaching, if they already know the story, the three little pigs in their own language, then it's easy to follow what you're saying. And
yeah,
so
that's true. Yeah.
yeah, so they will learn, or they will acquire, they will pick up the words very easily by listening to stories.
Yeah, I guess if it's in context and also, like you said, you recycle the vocabulary. So
Yeah,
from one story to the next, you
yeah,
use some of the same words. And
yes.
it reminds me as well that when my sons were little, so when we got books from the library, they understood a lot better when I was telling the story in French, because even if it was written in English, I would tell it in French because that's how I use French with my sons.
Hmm.
But because I would use words they knew and I was explaining throughout the story, in English, I felt that I was stuck with the text that was written. So sometimes it was too difficult and they understood less when I was saying the words that were written because I didn't choose them. It wasn't words that they knew, so it made it more difficult. And how much of so we're talking about comprehensible input and optimal input. Um, how much of a text does a child need to understand to be able to read on their own or to understand the story? Because you said you use a lot of synonyms, antonyms, etc. to clarify, but how much of a text does a child need to understand to be able to acquire new words?
How many times do they have to listen to it, you mean?
No, for example, if there is one story, do they need to understand 90% of the
Oh,
words you use
oh,
so that
oh,
they
no,
can.
no, that doesn't matter what words. All we want to know is they enjoyed the story. They understood the flow of the story. If they understood who was what in the story, what happened, and how it went, and how the problem was solved, how the story ended. If they understood it, that's all you want.
Okay,
That's all you want. You know,
thank you.
it's not a good idea to pressure kids,
Yeah.
even when they're old, so yeah.
Thank you. That links well with a session we had on Friday with Dr. Deval, where we talked about the importance of emotion in the learning process. So, yeah, all the things you're saying that are traditionally done in school with exams to prepare for, etc., that can be stressful. You remove them, and also when it's at home, no, except if, for example, you're preparing your child for a certain exam or anything like that, there is no time limit, so we don't need to push it too much onto them, and we can go with the interests at their own pace,
Hmm.
etc.
hmm So I think you can do a lot of good job about doing heritage language and stuff at home using story listening methodology. And you already use those things anyway, Lots of people, I think they call it a caretaker speech or
Ah,
something like that, And so, but the thing is, the reason why um, we are making it a little bit a big thing about this was that uh, we call this a comprehension aiding supplementation, and um, um, and we say the linguistic supplementation. There are linguistic supplementation, non-linguistic supplementation, and for at the beginning, when the the students are younger, we usually use a lot of pictures and drawing pictures and showing pictures on the in the picture book. But then when they get older or when they progress to be an intermediate level, we use a lot of linguistic supplementation, which is not only synonyms and antonyms, but explanations and definitions and maybe a story inside the story. You say, well, for example, this means
Yeah, that's
when
true.
this
Yeah.
happens, yeah. So we do the all things. But the reason why I am even making a sort of a big thing about this was that people don't do that. When they do storytelling, they memorize a storyline and they just tell a story. It's
Yeah.
not going to work because
They
then
don't
students don't,
adapt. Yeah.
yeah, they don't understand what you're saying, and so they will go to sleep. And then
Yeah.
they say storytelling doesn't work, or when they don't know what story listening is, they say, well, students don't sit quiet enough to listen to your story for 20 minutes. That's too long, Like my children or my students need to run around in the classroom they need to be to be active in the classroom. And I go, that's not true. When a child is really interested in a story, they sit and watch television for half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they say things like that, I say I'm getting a little bit critical. When they say things like that, they're not telling the story interesting enough. They need to learn how to do the story listening more interestingly.
Yeah.
If they When the students understand and when the story is interesting, they'll watch you and they'll listen.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're talking about things that don't work really well because they don't well what are the so sorry, my question was, have you observed some of the things that maybe other teachers do that you thought, or maybe they tried to use story listening, but
Yeah.
there were a
Yeah.
few things that they were missing, and that's why it wasn't working? Do you want
Right, right, right.
to, yeah,
Oh, there are many things they do wrongly. Okay. The first thing is, like I said, they just tell a story. They
yeah,
memorize a story and they tell a story. It becomes a performance for the teacher. Okay, they want to
yeah,
show the students how well they can speak the language. It's not the purpose.
yeah,
The the students must understand the language. And so it's not you, but it's about the students. And so you have to make the story comprehensible. And that's why you use both linguistics and non-linguistic supplementation. And the purpose of storytelling is not to teach the language, to have them experience and enjoy the story through the language that you're teaching so that they will experience vicarious experience, they call it, right? They become one of the characters,
yeah.
in the story when they are listening to you. And then the learning the language, acquiring the language is the result of understanding the story through the language.
Okay.
And so that's the thing that, and so sometimes the teacher comes in the classroom with oh my gosh, with a beautiful hair, with the beautiful dress, and then you start, telling a story. It's not your performance. Okay, that's one of the things that I
Okay.
I really don't like. And so I when I go to the classroom, I usually wear just black t-shirt. It could be
Okay.
white t-shirt, red.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, red or yellow. But I wear just a black t-shirt because I don't want to be the attention. I want my students to listen and watch the blackboard.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to. You don't. You're not the one who is the whatever, who is the center of the attention. Story
Yeah.
has to be the center of the attention. So that's another thing. Yeah. Another thing is that the lots of teachers start with bringing in a guitar. Let's sing a
Yeah.
song together in the storytelling class. No, you don't need a guitar. And some teachers bring in a colored chalk. To make it a blackboard beautiful. No, all you need is white chalk. Okay.
Why doesn't having a guitar like music or having colors, why is it bad?
Distraction.
Okay. Ah, they need
Oh,
to pay attention to the words that you're
yes.
saying more than,
Yes.
okay, I see.
And they have to just imagine what they are listening, and they have to experience.
Ah, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Okay? A lot of some teachers bring in a scarf. Some teachers bring in a sword. Some teachers bring in a crown and stuff. And no, you don't need that. That's a distraction. They don't understand what story listening is when they start doing things like that. Okay, it's a
Okay.
language acquisition class. It's
Yeah.
not a
Okay.
performance. It's not a theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Another
you.
thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing is they think that they have to teach these words. Yeah. That's not the idea. I don't know. Maybe I can come up with something else later. So
Okay.
shoot
And
another question.
so I'm thinking when we're at home, we can read different types of books. But when
Is it
there is a text, it can be a bit more constraining for us, unless, for example, it's a picture book or even a wordless book because there is no words, but there are images to help, and then you can tell the story with your own words that you know your child understands.
Mhm.
Um, and I was wondering, so there are novels, for example, where there's just text. For this, I guess it's a bit difficult to use story listening. For something that's in between, for comic books or um, picture books where there is a little bit of text, would that be good as well? Or, or
Well,
do you need
see,
the
I don't
least
know
text possible?
because see, my goal or the story listening GSSR aims at helping students become readers of that language. Okay, lifelong readers of the language. I think, lots of teachers who are interested in story listening are teaching like elementary school kids or preschool children, the kindergarten kids who are in a Spanish class or something. And when they are done with these class, like for 1 year or 2 years, these teachers don't even see these kids anymore, right? But and then so during that time for 2 years or so, once I don't know in 2 weeks or I don't know one time once I don't know what they do how many classes they have, but um um it's just uh you know you can't teach 5-year-old kids for 2 years once a week Spanish and expect them to become a lifelong reader in Spanish. You
Yeah,
know, and if they don't take the class again, they'll forget.
yeah,
Yeah. And so I'm not really, I don't know about this comic books or things like that. You know what I mean? I
okay,
am more serious about my students becoming the lifelong readers in English, yeah, Japanese students becoming the lifelong readers in English, or they will score really high on the standardized test to be able to go to English speaking country to go to a university type of
yeah,
thing. I'm not teaching high school kids who are taking foreign language for 1 year, and then forget about the language afterwards type of
yeah.
class. You know what I'm saying?
So that's good because for most parents, when we're raising our children with our home languages, it's for them to use it for a lifelong use of the language and to live
Right,
with it.
right,
And but one thing that you said, so two things actually. One, you said you want them to be readers, but
right.
up to now, I haven't heard you talk about
About
text.
reading yet.
And the second thing you talked is about you want your students to get good scores at the tests. So these are two questions I have. How do you get them to become readers? And then
Right.
how does it prepare them for the tests?
Test. Good, very good questions. Okay. You know, do you know a program called extensive reading?
No.
Oh, you don't. Okay. Okay.
But if you're, yeah,
Reading teachers, when you have a reading class or reading
yeah,
program, you have a reading text and you
yeah,
have the students read the text. Or you have the students start reading easy to readers and then start gradually reading higher level readers so that they will be able to read complex text type of thing. That's called
yeah,
extensive reading. But the problem that the extensive reading teachers have in a reading program is that students don't like to read.
Yeah.
A lot
Okay.
of students don't read. How is it in England? Do young people like college students in like England might be
Yeah.
different from
What we
in America?
see a lot in England is that in primary school they love reading
Hmm.
because it's just for reading for fun generally.
Hmm.
But after in secondary school, because they have a lot more to read for their lessons, then they
Hmm.
don't read for pleasure, and apparently that contributes to them not liking reading anymore.
Right, 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 right. Okay. So, okay, in Japan too, I think it's the same. The Japanese people like to read, and so bookstores are always full of people. But when it comes to reading in a foreign language, like for the Japanese people to read in English, it's very
Yeah.
difficult, so they don't read. And so even in the reading program in English, students are sort of forced to read because it's a credit,
I
that's a
see.
credit that they have to gain, and so they are forced to read, and then they say, well, these are easy books, so they start you read, and so the students are forced to read, and they read it because when the graded readers are still easy, but when it gets more difficult, they will stop reading because because it's difficult, and they don't know how to pick they don't know which books to read, and where to start and all that stuff. And so that's why I call it guided self-selected reading. But what I'm saying, what the reason why I was actually, or I was at the beginning a reading teacher. I was assigned to teach reading in English at a
Okay.
university. Okay, but then my students were reading, but then they were not reading that much. Only about 7% of the students were really reading, but the other students were just reading because it was required.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
and then I decided to introduce auditory input as story listening. And when you do story listening is not just a conversational language. Story listening is delivered in the way that the language is expressed in a full sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, and also when the material is a written script, written language, and then the teacher also uses the expressions used in the text. And so when students read the text after they listen to the story, it's easier to
I
read.
see.
And
Yeah.
so gradually they will start feeling better about reading. And then they will, because they listen to stories, so many stories, they will become more interested in stories. And so gradually do you understand this?
Yeah.
Gradually
Yeah.
it's like they used to say you cannot lead a horse and make them drink when the horse is
Yeah.
not thirsty.
Yeah.
What story listening does is to make the horse thirsty for stories.
Yeah.
Because they listen to it so many stories, they think, well, maybe I want to read something that's more interesting, or I want to read something that I'm interested in. And so they go to the library, and if I tell them which
Oh,
shelf is at their level, and then they'll go to that level and look for the stories, like the horror stories or detective story, mystery stories, and then they pick it up, and if they have this a successful experience, then they are hooked to books.
yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So we create the interest, the motivation, and then they will want to read.
Yeah, but
I
it's not
see.
just interest and motivation. Because they listen to so many stories, they eventually accumulate so many words. Their vocabulary size grows, and
Yeah.
then they understand this complex sentences because they've heard it in stories. And so they develop their listening competence with vocabulary and grammar.
Okay.
And
And
that
then
really
that
helps.
leads to them being able to pass the exams like
Yeah,
properly. That's
because let's look, look at those exams. They are all multiple choice.
yeah.
Yeah, and then have you noticed all the test questions? First one is listening comprehension. Second one listening comprehension. Third one is for reading comprehension. Fourth one is reading comprehension. There are no grammatical terms used in the questions to ask them about the
Ah,
grammatical knowledge. They say listen to the next paragraph and answer the questions. Listen
I
to the
see.
next conversation and answer the questions. Yeah. Read the next paragraph and answer the questions, and read the next conversation and then answer the questions. And so it's all listening and reading. And so what I'm saying is pure, optimal, unified input. Okay, pure means no seven deadly sins, and
Yeah,
optimal means those four characteristics with the low affective filter. Okay, because you don't have any sins, and then unified means listening and reading combined
yeah.
input. That's the solution.
Thank you very much. We're getting close to the hour, so
Okay.
is there any one last thing you would like to share with maybe, I know you're a teacher, but if you want to share with parents who want to pass on a language using story listening, is there one key thing you would like them to remember?
Yes, yes. Last time when I talked to Ute, she
Yeah,
asked me a question. She said, "Is it okay to show a picture book and tell a story?" And I said, "No." The reason why I said no was because when you show a picture book and you just tell a story, or if you just read out loud the story, the sentence that are written in the story in the book, even when you're pointing at the rabbit, a child might be looking at the frog on the next page.
okay.
And they may not be, the child may not be watching and listening. And therefore, I said it's a good idea to have a board and draw a picture of a frog or rabbit. But if you don't have a blackboard, or if you don't have a piece of chalk, and if you don't want to draw, I think you can still use a picture book, which is a good idea. And I should please tell Ute that it's, before I said no, but that was no in the classroom. But if it was
Ah,
at home, you can do that. And when you read stories, not just read the stories, but then explain it. Um,
yeah,
explain it, describe it,
yeah,
and you have a story in the story. For example,
yeah,
the other day when we went to the zoo, do you remember, type of thing. And so when I think at home, you think I think it's a great idea that you have a story, the picture book, and read the story to them when they want to. And then can I tell you something else?
yeah,
If you are interested, this is I think I have a good idea. For the heritage language people, if
yeah.
they really want to teach their child, like I don't know, Japanese or French or Latin or like whatever, I think you should you should contact not all, but the many neighbors who want to do the same thing.
Okay.
If you want to teach your child French, you talk to other, you have a network of people, and you tell everybody, are you interested in teaching your children your heritage language, French? And then they say, yeah, yeah. And then you get together and you put all the books together in one space. I don't know where you can have that
Ah,
place.
yeah,
But a house, you can rent a house, you can buy a little house. I don't know, you can call it enchanted little cottage of French or something,
yeah.
and then you have lots of the books in French, and somebody goes there and do the story listening. Okay, every week, like on Saturdays from 2 to 3 or something, somebody goes to that enchanted French house, and then you tell a story like I do. And then children will come
Ah,
and listen to the story, and then they will go and check out a book or two, and then take it home, and the parents read it at home at night.
that's nice. Yeah. So
Is
yeah,
that
go
nice?
through the story listening first so that they can hear the words,
Yeah,
they can live the story first, and then they can read it with their parents.
yeah, yeah. They,
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be the same story, a
Yeah,
different story, but then the parent can use the words that the teacher used in telling another story when they read aloud the picture book to their
yeah.
child. And then
That's a nice idea. Yeah.
they have this experience of in French on Saturday, and then every night, and then their head is ringing with in French language all the time, and that's good for
Thank you
language
very
acquisition.
much. Very
You're
nice
welcome.
idea. And I guess it could be a nice idea as well for secondary schools. Like I said, in England, there are many students who don't like reading anymore because it's too just academic reading. and they don't read for pleasure anymore. So maybe having that kind of story listening activities could be nice as well.
Yeah.
Thank you
It's
very much.
a
Yeah,
good time to get together with a child.
yeah,
It's good bonding
yeah.
between parent and the child.
Thank you very much for sharing your method with us and for explaining the value of story listening, how to do it as well. So, yeah, as I said at the beginning, if anyone is interested in looking deeper into this, so Dr. Mason is giving away a kit that you can choose on her website. The links are in the description. And you use the promo code library for you, so YOU at the end. Yeah, and just after, so in about a bit less than 15 minutes, we're going to meet Tetsu Young to talk about how we can juggle different languages at home, and especially when they have different scripts. So if you're interested, join us there. Thank you very much again, Dr. Mason, for coming here. And I know it's very late for you in Japan, so thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.